Welcome back, everyone. I'm dating coach Erica Leonard, and today I'm going to tell you about one of the most dangerous things that you can put in your dating profile or even have in conversation when you're on dates. And about 90% of you are committing this cardinal sin. So it's an important one. Let's go ahead and solve for it. Before we go into it, I'd like to invite you all to subscribe down below. Hit that button and oblige me, please. Thank you so much. So the concept that I want to talk about today is what's termed as generic traits. Generic traits is anytime you state an interest or a trait or an activity or a passion, but you do it in a very generic form. That is, it's very broad and unspecific. It can apply to about 90% of people, if not 100% of people by default, and thus it makes you very uninteresting. So before I explain generic traits and how to avoid them, I'm going to talk about some of the biggest examples of them that I see repeatedly, having reviewed thousands of dating profiles for both men and women. Common generic traits are, I love trying new restaurants, or I love getting outside, love nature, loves to travel. Do any of these sound familiar? They probably do. You've already read them a million times ad nauseum on a dating app profile, or you yourself are using them in a profile or in a conversation. Okay, so these are traits that are so loose that they apply to almost 100% of the population by default. That's what makes them generic. They can be applied to everyone. Okay, and when you're generic, you're not specific. They, the viewer or the person on a date with, has no reason to choose you over anyone else who also uses these generic traits, or at least we can assume that they're true for them. You don't stand out at all when you use generic traits. So let me tell you what establishes if something is a generic trait. There's 3 variations to it. Number 1, if it's a trait that either applies to somewhere between 90% or 100% of the population, there's a good chance it's generic. For example, I'm not going to say that I love trying new restaurants. Why? Because everybody does. Maybe a few exceptions in there, but the point is it's almost 100%. I'm not going to say that I'm a foodie or I like eating food. The reason is everybody does. It applies to everybody. Okay, so it makes you very uninteresting when you use these traits. The second variation of a generic trait is anytime you use a trait or a stated interest that's not specific at all. It's so broad it can apply to almost anybody because we don't quite know what it is with precision. So for example, if you've ever stated that you like exercising, that would be a generic trait. Why? Because we don't actually know what you like to do to exercise. We don't know who you are as a person. There's a difference between someone who, say, plays golf and then someone who runs marathons. So we want to know more about the specifics, the activities that you enjoy, but not broad terms such as exercise or travel or getting outside or cooking. The antidote to all generic traits is to simply be specific. The third variation of a generic trait is anytime you use a statement that may or may not be true, but because it's naturally desirable, you're going to make a claim to it anyway. So for example, if you were to say on your profile or in a conversation that you're loyal, kind, and open-minded, I would argue those are generic traits. Those are highly desirable qualities. No one out there is going to say that they are disloyal. No one out there is going to say that they're mean. Okay, no one out there is going to say that they're completely closed-minded. So here's the kicker. Even if someone is mean or closed-minded or disloyal, guess what? They know those things are not going to be desirable to talk about or to state in a profile. So they, of course, are going to say the positive correlate instead. They're going to say that they're loyal, that they're open-minded, that they're kind, even when that's not true. It's also possible that a lot of people with such negative personality traits or interests are simply in denial that they even have these negative traits. Thus, they're always going to state the best sounding thing. Words such as loyal, fun-loving, kind, open-minded, that's basically something that can be said by anyone, and it is commonly repeated in dating profiles and conversations. All right, so be careful of these generic traits. They basically have no meaning because they're overused and they naturally apply to most people. At this point, you should realize you've probably used a generic trait at some point here, either in your conversation or your dating profile. Fortunately, there is an antidote to these generic traits should you happen to be one of the people using them, and you probably are, statistically speaking. All you have to do is get specific. Don't talk about how you love cooking food. Talk about your favorite dish or your favorite cuisine you love to eat at a restaurant. Do not talk about how you love to travel. Again, that's too broad. That can mean anything. That can mean once a year you drive a couple hours for a weekend trip across the state. Or it can mean that once a year you bounce from country to country and you live nomadically for a period of time. Lots of different styles of travel. So let's get specific here. Let's solve for these generic traits. Talk about your favorite destination or your favorite region, or maybe share a story of one of your favorite travel adventures. To anyone watching this, if you have been putting thought into how you conduct your conversations on dates and how you write your profiles, I highly encourage you to go ahead and just take some self-reflection notes and ask yourself, what are some things that I do specific that don't apply to anyone else? Or at least not to the general population by default. So for example, if you were to use a broad generic trait like going outside, we don't know what that means, right? You can ask yourself, okay, I'm going to talk about how I like skateboarding instead. All right, skateboarding does not apply to 90% of people or more. Skateboarding applies to just a small fraction of the population. But going outside, that broad generic trait does apply to 90% or more of the population. Okay, so you just have to get specific. That way you're not using just the basic default. If you're using a lot of these generic traits, you've got a big problem. First of all, in your profile, you're not standing out at all. Your profile is so broadly written, so generic, that to anyone who is high value looking at that, they're just going to skim right past it. They've already seen it hundreds, if not thousands of times. You do nothing to stick out. It's also possible that you are getting dates or you are attracting partners who themselves are very generic, don't really know what they want, don't know who they are to any degree of specificity. In short, you tend to get lower quality dates and matches. But when you use specific traits, you are going to attract a higher quality match or date because now you are appealing to those who look at your profile and they have a clear idea about who you are. They know what you want and they find alignment behind that, or they know your specific interests so they can say that they also have a shared interest in that thing. It simply is about giving yourself an identity. And that way, at least the viewers know what they're looking at and who you are. It is a matter of fact that for those of you who use a lot of these generic traits, you might have to take a good hard look at your lifestyle. Are you being ambitious? Are you getting out there and trying new things? Are you being social? Are you willing to explore your world? Or do you simply choose just to do the basics and to stay at home as much as you can, never wanting to try anything new? You can bet that that ambition, that wanting to explore the world is a very attractive trait. So be careful if you are watching this video and you find yourself as one of the people who is using a lot of generic traits. It might be time to get out there and explore some new activities, some new friendships, and some new hobbies. Once again, folks, this is dating coach Eric Leonard. I invite you to subscribe down below and please get rid of those generic traits. Let's get specific instead. You'll have much better results on your dating conversations and profiles. Thank you so much. See you next time.